18-year-old Timothy Guy lived and worked as a ranch hand on the Sleepy Fox Farm in Forsyth County, Georgia. He loved anything and everything to do with horses, so it was a perfect job for him, or so he thought. Timothy was a lovable, outgoing teenager who had a slight learning disability. He would go home for the weekends and spend time with his family, and then return to the farm for the work week. On Friday, February 6, 1987, this plan was changed. There was a horse show nearby, and the family thought Tim was going to go ride a horse in the show, so when he didn't come home, they didn't think much about it. But when the foreman called on Monday morning and said Tim never showed up for work, they knew something was dreadfully wrong. The foreman told the family that Tim had left with a man named Jeff that Friday evening, but nobody really knew him and no one had seen him since. Many people think Jeff never existed. What happened to Timothy Guy? Was he picked up by a stranger named Jeff? Or did something dreadful happen to him on the farm, and Jeff is merely a cover story? It's been almost 40 years, and we still have no answers. The foreman has quite a criminal record involving drugs and weapons charges. Did Timothy see something that day that he shouldn't have? Did Tim ever leave Sleepy Fox Farms? This episode is brought to you by Chaos Rules in Madhouse, Madison County, Missouri. This rural community should be a safe place, but it hides a dark secret. Fredericktown is one of the most dangerous places to live in America. With a crime rate of 31 per 1,000 residents, Fredericktown has one of the highest crime rates compared to all communities of all sizes. I started researching one case sent to me by a desperate grandmother that led me to 15 more. Then I realized this county has had murder, corruption, and chaos since before the Wild West days. This book will start with the lynching by a Fredericktown mob in 1844, and will end up in an explosion. Hold on to your seats when you read this one. You're in for a wild, chaotic ride through rural Missouri. Check out my new book, Madhouse, Madison County, today.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Chasing Justice on True Crime Tuesday. I am your host, Sonova Cantrell. On the line with me, I have two of my favorite co-hosts. I have fellow victims advocate and crime writer, Cricket Andrews. How are you, Cricket?
I'm good. Hi, everyone.
I've also got my favorite research assistant, Miss T. How are you, Miss Tammy? How are you?
I'm good. I hope everyone else is good.
I hope everyone's doing well. We've researched this case and we've been working on it all day, and hopefully we have a good show for you. I will warn you that this is one of those cases that is kind of devastating. First time I heard about this case was in 2019 when someone I knew was a fellow crime writer and blogger. He wrote about it, and we actually were kind of in the same network. And so I heard about it then. Then I had a guest blogger write about it on my blog, and then I have actually spoken through different messages and things with this young man's his father, and his father is on watching the video with us. So make sure, like always, that you keep your comments respectful, because this is something that almost 40 years have gone by, and this happened in 1987, and this poor man doesn't have any more answers really than what he had at the beginning. So hello to all of you that have actually signed on and have been waiting for me to go live. Thank you for all of the comments. I love to see you guys' conversations start before we even go live. I appreciate that. But let's jump right in. Tonight we are talking about Timothy Guy. Now, he was an 18-year-old young man. This is a picture of him here. I'll give you another picture to look at. This is an 18-year-old young man who had an infectious smile. He had dimples. He was a very pleasant, happy-go-lucky type person. He was very outgoing, and he loved horses. He's an 18-year-old man. It has been reported that he had some sort of maybe slight learning disabilities. He was somewhat maybe behaved a little bit younger than his actual age. Very sweet, naive, innocent person that we're going to be talking about tonight. And unfortunately, we're going to be talking about how he never made it home. Now, this young man, he was actually a ranch hand. He worked as a ranch hand because he loved horses. He worked for the Sleepy Fox Farm in Forsyth County, Georgia. Now, he loved horses. This ranch was about 25 miles or so from his home. He didn't have a vehicle of his own at the time. And so, or he didn't have his driver's license. I'm not sure which it is, but he wasn't able to drive himself at the time. So he would actually get a ride to the farm. He would stay at the farm all week. And then come Friday, he would get a ride home. On Friday, February 6th, 1987, unfortunately, something changed about those plans. Now, he would normally spend a couple days at home with his family and all of his siblings. I do believe he was one of 7 children, and he lived with his family and he enjoyed being there, but he also enjoyed the horses. So he would leave and be gone all week and then come home on the weekends. And but this weekend, things were different. He wasn't supposed to be coming home. The family wasn't expecting him to come home because there was a horse show, and he was actually going to be riding a horse in the show. And so they weren't expecting him to come home. He was a young man that called home regularly, so he talked to his family regularly, even though he actually lived off the property. He lived at the farm, but he didn't call home, and he was. It wasn't really unusual because they knew he was busy. Unfortunately, turn around that next Monday, and they get a call from the foreman. Now, the foreman, we do know his name, but like always, anytime there's any kind of suspicious person in the story, or someone who is we believe may be a person of interest, we usually don't say their name. So we're not going to say his name. But I will tell you that he was the foreman, and he also called and told the parents that he never showed up. He's like, what's going on with Timothy? Timothy didn't show up to work today. And then the father says, well, he didn't show up at home either, but we weren't expecting him home. And this is where we can call him PK, because that's his initials. We'll call the foreman Mr. PK. So Mr. PK actually called the father and gave this story. Now, this story, I do believe, has fluctuated slightly over the years, but it was basically that Tim was leaving on Friday evening, and that a Chevy Impala, either a 1972 or a 1974 Chevy Impala, drove up, and a man named, he called Jeff, he came and picked up Timothy. He gives a description of this man. He says he's approximately 5'10", weighs 180 pounds, with brown hair and a beard. Neither PK or anyone else has said that they have seen this Jeff character again. Now, over the course of time, there's going to be lots of things happen and things that are said that makes everyone who's looked into this case think that maybe Jeff is a figment of someone's imagination. So we're gonna be talking about that, but this is something that I really want. So those of you that don't know what a Chevy Impala looks like, there you go. There's I don't know what color it is. If Warren wants to tell us what color, I don't know if I read what color it was anywhere, but if you would like to put the color of the vehicle in the comments, feel free to do so. Feel free to jump in and say whatever you'd like to say in the comments, and I'll try to keep up with it. Cricket or Tammy, you might keep an eye on the comments, so if he has something to say, we make sure and get it on the camera. So
Yeah.
This is what I find so disturbing with this. We have a young man who is very bright. We have a young man who is not in school. It would seem that he got out of school by 16. And so he was no longer in school, but he was working, and he was enjoying life. He was very, very smart, and yet there was something that has been reported, and we don't really know. It was back in the 80s, so it could have been ADHD. It could have been, any kind of any kind of autism. It could have been anything that we have labels for now. But back in the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot of labels. You may have just been you may have just been rowdy and not liking school, and they would call, they would say something. So, but here's the thing. Whatever the case is, he was a very sweet person, very slightly naive person, and he cared a lot. And so you could tell he was someone who may have been easily manipulated by someone who's not quite so innocent. And I feel like this is what we're going to be talking about today. We've got a very sweet, bright young man who was easily manipulated, easily caught in a snare that he couldn't understand, and I feel like that's the biggest tragedy of this is there isn't any more information from 2019 when I seen this case the first time, and so I always find it hard when there's not a lot of information and you can't even write a 500-word blog post. Yeah. This is a boy who had 18 years of sunshine. When he smiled, he had big, huge dimples, and it seems like just looking at his pictures, when he smiled, you'd have a hard time not smiling back.
Yeah, Warren says they don't know Jeff.
Yeah, nobody knows who Jeff is. And so the only reason why I'm mentioning Jeff's name, because I don't think he exists. But here's the thing. I want to talk about this. We're gonna talk about some things that led up to his disappearance. That we, of course, hindsight's 2020, so you can look back and see all kinds of little things that maybe you could slough off in the moment and not think too much about. And so we're gonna kind of backtrack and talk about some of the things that's going on in this young man's life. And then we're gonna talk about these because this is a parent's worst nightmare. You think, I know when I was a kid, my dad was overprotective because I was his little girl. But you have to be just as protective with your boys nowadays. And this is one of those things where I feel like, it's a parent's worst nightmare. And then to have to not have any answers 40 years later is just devastating. So tonight, I'm hoping we can make a good, clean video for Mr. Warren to be able to share. And of course, I have an audience that keeps growing, and we will share it to everybody we know. I have a network of people that allow me to share to their audience as well. And hopefully we can get this out to a big enough crowd of people that we can get somebody to say something. And that's the whole point of this. So Cricket, I'll start off with you. When you first read this case, what was the first thing that you felt like really stood out to you that was odd? What did you find odd about this whole arrangement with Jeff? Cricket, can you hear me? Cricket?
Sorry, I was muted.
Well, I just had a comment from Venus that says, how come your voice keeps going out? Does anybody else?
Yes, yours is going in and out a bit.
Okay. I was wondering because my microphone got moved way over there. Okay. So tell me, Cricket, when we first started looking into this case, and of course, you've seen this case years ago as well. You and I have kind of been running this game for a while, and then I stepped out to study other things and then come back, and I'm finding so many cases. I was excited because I seen 3 or 4 cases that I had written about before, and they were solved in the 2 years that I was studying. And so I was all excited, but then I come across cases like this, and it's just devastating because there's really no new information. So what do you find about this case that really touched you when you first heard about it?
What stuck out with me is Jeff, and nobody knows who Jeff is, number one. Number two, Timothy, was an innocent type person, naive, I want to say, because he worked on farms. That was what he loved to do. So that makes him a target more so.
Yeah.
To manipulate. and you know,
Right.
that's what got to me.
Right. Well, this is something that I feel like it's devastating no matter what. But when you have someone who doesn't quite understand how cruel the world can be,
Right.
it just makes it even worse. I know he wasn't a 5-year-old kid, and or anything, but to me, it's devastating because you have somebody who has whoever it is, whether you think it's Jeff or you think something
Yeah.
else happened on the farm, which is what I believe, and I will give you some reasons why, and we'll let you guys decide for yourself. But
And also, it happens so much, and with they don't have to be kids, adults too
right,
get targeted, isolated,
yeah,
and you know, that kind of stuff.
right. Miss Tammy, what do you have anything to say before I go into? We'll do a little bit of a deep dive. I try to do an overview and then give you guys a moment to say something, and then we'll jump in a little bit.
I was thinking the same thing about Timothy, that he was probably really naive and someone easy to take advantage of. And if they were doing some things at the farm that they shouldn't have been doing, he would be the perfect one to hire because he was probably a hard worker. And then he, was naive to what was going on. So
Right.
that's what I was thinking about when I was reading about it.
Well, to me, it seems like we need to kind of explain, we're calling this a farm. It's basically, it's Sleepy Fox Farms, but it's kind of like a horse ranch. It's a place where you board horses. So people who own horses, but maybe don't have proper means to house them over winter, or place where they're going to be going on a vacation and can't maintain their horse. So it's a place where they're taking care of a group of horses that aren't necessarily theirs. They're taking care of other people's horses. Now, if you've ever had a horse, they are a lot of work. They're a lot
Yes,
of fun.
they
They're
are.
a lot of work. They require, exercise, and there's a whole list of things that horses need. And so they're not an animal that you can just put extra food in their bowl and leave them for a long weekend. They have to have, they have to have maintenance. And so this is where these people would leave their horses. So you had horses of all different kinds in all different states, so you had some that may be sick every once in a while, some that needs, different things. So would be a really good learning experience for someone who really enjoys a horse, who really enjoys those kinds of animals. It wouldn't be an experience where it's someone who has one type of horse. So he's going to be learning about all different types of horses. He's going to be learning a little bit about what the veterinarian does. He's going to learn a little bit about, putting the shoes on and all that kind of stuff. He's going to be learning a lot of things. And then, it obviously sounds like he had access to go to horse shows. And so he's going to be learning a lot about his favorite thing, and so to me, that's the best thing ever. If you can find your passion and then do that for your living, that's the happiest employee ever, so in that context, this should have been the best job for him.
Yeah.
However,
and also the fact that
the people that I'm sorry, what?
He was staying in a trailer on the farm. He was the only one that came and went like that.
Right.
So there's nobody to corroborate.
Right. There's not a group. It's not like it was a place where you board your horses and a housing unit for a bunch of teenagers. That's not the way it works.
Or
But
farm hands that stayed there.
Property wasn't actually owned by Mr. PK. This was owned by people that was out of state. So the owners were actually from Florida. And so they didn't have anything really to do with the property or anything going on the property. They're out of state, until something hit the news or anything. They probably didn't even know what was going on up there. And quite frankly, if they were just investors, they probably didn't really care unless, that legal trouble hit. So you've got a situation where there's no one really invested in the property itself. You've got tenants who are actually running it. So you've got Mr. PK and his kids, some of his kids and things there. There's going to be a few other people show up, but this is a property that's actually owned by somebody else and run by this group of people. And Timothy actually joined this group of people. So if you look at the dynamics, one, nobody really cares about the property. It's not theirs. They're just there to make money. They're there to work on the property doing this. But on the other hand, you need to realize that Timothy was the outsider. He's going into a prefabricated clique of people that have their own agenda, doing their own things, and then he's the outsider coming in. So even if he didn't have any kind of issues whatsoever, that's a dynamic that is a little bit hard to deal with. So if you're talking about someone who is slightly socially awkward, that's automatically a hard thing to overcome. So if he had any kind of social awkwardness whatsoever, that was going to be pretty difficult for him. So he's there just wanting to do whatever the horses need and to be there with the horses and do what he loves. They're there for another purpose. Now you'll find out that the boss, the foreman, actually has a criminal record. You're going to find out that there's lots of rumors of drugs running through the area. You're going to find out that this man, we want to call them rumors. That's what the rumor mill says. But you're going to find out that this man has on his record, he has drug charges. He has weapons charges. He has other charges. He's got a long criminal record. Now, within a couple years, less than 3 years after this happened to Timothy, this whole place closes down. The people from Florida sell off the property. It becomes housing developments. And so now you can't even go back and really search the farm. Now, what makes it even more devastating is the police didn't listen to the family when they called. Now, I don't know how many times we've covered cases and I've written about cases where the police are not listening to the family. They call. They're like, you need to wait 48 hours before you do a missing persons report. Well, I'm sorry, if he was last seen on Friday and they find out Monday and they call Monday, that's more than 48 hours. I don't know where these people went to school and learned to count or tell time, but from Friday evening to Monday morning is more than 48 hours. So just for the fact that they made the family wait even longer before they said something and started anything is devastating to the case and devastating to the family. So they go through the processes, they make the calls, and then of course there's an argument over jurisdiction because of the county line. There's a vague county line. They're not sure which county this happened in. And so then there's a jurisdictional dispute. And so all of this time is ticking away while they're going through this red tape, trying to figure out what happened to their son. You're going to find out that eventually Mr. PK and his crew do talk to the police at some point and tell them the same Jeff story that they told the family. Unfortunately, nobody's ever seen Jeff before or after. Nobody's found that car. They have no idea. And so this is a car that even at this time would have been, a fairly older car. So it wouldn't have necessarily been the latest and greatest, most popular thing on the road. So it's definitely something that would have stuck out if they had looked. So you're going to find out that the police didn't go out there and thoroughly search the farm. They didn't go out there with dogs. They didn't go out there. They didn't bring anybody in for interrogations. And yet this 18-year-old boy with whatever he may have had, we don't know. He didn't have a clinical diagnosis, but we do know that he had some issues. This young boy is, and I call him a boy, not out of disrespect, just because I have a 19-year-old son, and to me, he's a man, I know, but he's still a boy to mama, you know.
My
And
son's going to be 28 and he's still
but
a boy.
I mean, you know, so I apologize. I'm not trying to be, you know, discount his abilities in any way, but you've got a 19-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid here who was already at a disadvantage. He didn't have a good ride home. If he had wanted to, he'd had to call home and get somebody to take him home. So it was like, if he had problems anytime during that week, he was going to have to find a way to personally deal with it, unless he wanted to hitchhike his way back to the house or call and wait for somebody to come get him. So he was automatically at a disadvantage in this situation. And then you'll find that, you know, the rumor mill says that there were drugs running through there. I say that that's probably true, just down to, if you look up this man's criminal record, you will find that he had drug charges, and you'll find that he was arrested on weapons charges. I did hear a rumor, however, and this is something that, Warren, if you're there and able to comment, you might verify for me. I do believe I read somewhere that PK, which is the foreman, actually had some kind of former law enforcement background. And so I don't know if there's any kind of issue there, but nobody could find Jeff. Nobody can verify the car. Nobody can verify Jeff. Nobody can verify that he was where he was going. So I want to know, did the police go to that horse show and talk to people? My first thought was, okay, he told the family he was going to a horse show. So whether you can find Jeff or not, go to that horse show, go to that show and interview people there. Did you go there and talk to the people, the promoters? Did you go to the organizer? Did you go to the people and say, hey, there was a kid named Timothy Guy that was supposed to be here riding such and such horse? They don't just throw random people in. You know, if he said he was going to this place to ride a horse, then that was on a schedule somewhere. And somebody had to notice if not, this young man showed up with this horse. So somebody should have gone to that show and said, have you seen Timothy? And
they register with these horse shows. Everybody has to register.
Everybody knows. So I'm like, well, what horse was he supposed to ride? Because they have, you know, they have the name of the horse, they have the name of the rider, they have the time, they have where the horse come from, you know, they have everything there. So I want to know, why didn't the police go to the show? Because this is where, so here's the thing. If he told his dad or his mom or his stepmom or his family, if he told some of his family members that he was going to this location, and if this so-called Jeff was going to take him to this location, why not go to that location and make sure he didn't show up there? You know what I mean? Why not verify that and say, okay, we know he never made it to the horse show, so that means he's somewhere between the horse show and this farm. You know what I mean? And then you slowly work your way back, step back and back and back and back until you prove that he never left the farm. But I don't see anything in their investigation that shows they have done any of this. And so this is what I find so devastating. Warren says he was a detective in Dade County, Florida. Yes. So the person that told the story of Jeff, for those of you that just signed on, I seen my number jump up for a second ago. For those of you that just signed on, we're talking about the case of Timothy Guy, an 18-year-old ranch hand with some learning disabilities who disappeared and from this ranch. And the name of the ranch is, I have to look it up again, Sleepy Fox Ranch, which I think is weird. Why would you call it Sleepy Fox if you're a horse ranch? So I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. So tell me, Tammy, do you think that it's a logical conclusion to say maybe we should talk to the horse show to see if Timothy showed up. I'm sorry if I trip up and say Timmy, because we just covered a case about Timmy, and I keep saying Timmy instead of Timothy. But to me, that's the first logical step. Make sure, and the police should go to the horse show.
What I thought about
Show up.
also was the person who said Jeff picked him up, and he gave a description of how tall he was. Well, okay, did Jeff get out of the car? I mean, find out more about that. How do they know about this Jeff? And then there's two different stories. One said a car, and then somebody else said a pickup. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. And see, that's the thing. The story about Jeff and the car is both messed up twice. They've gone back and forth.
And it's a general description of him. So
and how did they know
stick out?
How did they know his name was Jeff?
If none of them know them, how did they know his name was Jeff?
Oh, exactly.
Be like, oh, hey, what is your name? We can't let you pass this cattle guard until you tell us your name. It's like, this is ridiculous. Now, Warren says that they did go up to the farm on that Monday afternoon. And this is what really makes, the make and model of the car has changed. They have a very random description of this so-called man named Jeff. I've never given a description of a person and say, oh, well, he's 5'10", 180 pounds. No. I'm like, well, he's taller than me, or she's shorter than me. I've never met a man shorter than me, but I'm kind of short.
Doesn't that sound something like a detective would say?
Yeah, and so see, this kind of like, well, maybe it's because he's an ex-cop.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that description, they didn't give any facial to try to do a sketch or anything. So that's why.
Do any sketching? See, to me,
well, they couldn't
research to do, because in reality, they could have brought PK in and done some kind of suspect sketch. But I didn't hear them doing that.
No, and they were just focused on his height, and there was no facial description. So, you're not going to get anywhere with that.
Well, to me, I don't understand the 5'10", 180 pounds. Like you said, Tammy, did he get out of the car so you could see him?
Yeah.
I mean, if he
got out of the car,
how tall he is.
If he got out of the car, you think there might be a little bit more information because why would he have gotten out of the car?
Exactly.
Somebody else.
Right. So, I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Now, if any of that sounds okay, like, okay, well, Sonova, you're just looking for a conspiracy theory because, you do have a tinfoil fedora. I made one the last time we did a conspiracy case. But my thought on it is if that isn't enough to make you question things, I'm going to tell you something that absolutely will. When the father and I don't know who he took with him, but when they went to the farm that afternoon. Okay, so it's Monday afternoon. This kid has only missed a half a day of work because if it's afternoon, the day's not even over yet. Okay, so this kid has missed half a day of work. PK's wife has already gathered up all of his clothes and thrown them in trash bags, gathered up all of his belongings, and they tried to force Warren to take his paycheck. So here's his paycheck. And I'm sitting here going, how do you know this kid isn't coming back? He missed a half a day of work. Are you firing him?
Yeah, that's a big red flag there.
So to me, it's like they knew he wasn't coming back. And if it was just, hey, he didn't show up for a half a day work, how many of you have gotten fired for missing a half a day's work?
Heck, you can get fired for being 5 minutes late.
My thought on it is do they pack all your stuff up in trash bags and leave it outside the door? I'm just like, this is a farmhand. I remember it's not on a farm. My grandpa was a incredible, amazing bricklayer. So he laid brick and did a little bit of rock work, but he was really, he's been all over the U.S. making some really amazing buildings. and he hired crews all the time, and you couldn't get people to come to work. They would drive you crazy. They wouldn't show up for this, they wouldn't show up for that, and then then they get upset if you were upset, and and it was always a mess trying to get people to show up to work. But I never heard of him firing somebody for missing a half a day of work. Half the time, the kind of guys he always picked up, they were all drunk over the weekend, so he knew on Monday morning they weren't going to be there. He already scheduled it in that they weren't going to be there on Monday morning because they was probably all hungover. So to me, the fact that they're willing to pack up all of his stuff. Warren says they even washed his clothes. So they washed his clothes, threw them all in a trash bag, and had them ready for when the family drove up. So I'm sitting here going, on top of all of that, where's the empathy? If this is a kid that's working for you, taking care of horses, this is a kid that is working for you, doing your job. I don't care how long he's worked for you. I don't care how well you know him, even how well you like him. This is a human being that's just vanished into thin air. Why don't you care? Why don't you care a little bit even? That is always mind blowing to me. I know not everybody has that much empathy, and not everybody, cares as much as some people do. But I'm like, to me, it's just out of my mind. I can't fathom not at least caring. You've got a father showed up and some family to show up, and you're just throwing them bags of their son's belongings like they're garbage, just throwing them. Here's the check, get out of here. So I don't understand. To me, if you believe the cover story, there is nothing in that cover story that tells that foreman that he's not coming back. He just missed a half a day work.
Right.
You know what I mean? So to me, that right there, no empathy whatsoever. They didn't give a crap that he was gone. They they washed his clothes. Why did they wash his clothes?
I was wondering.
They threw everything he had into garbage bags and handed them to the family like, here's your son's trash.
Mm.
And
And I
what about
feel
Family,
the answers are on that farm by the people who work there. That's where all the answers are.
absolutely.
And I feel like it wasn't, they didn't keep on them enough, in my opinion.
They should have rode those people into the ground until they got some answers. I would be a horrible cop. I mean, I would be riding people into the ground until I got the answers I needed, especially when there's kids involved, Mm-hmm. But of course, that's a crazy mom too. I mean, something happens to my kids, and I go mama bear, But yes, we're going to find out that there's other things that we're going to find out after Timothy goes missing. Okay. We're going to find out that this isn't just the first random thing that's happened at this farm. You're going to find out that there was actually trouble in the past. But unfortunately, they didn't talk to their dad. And so their dad didn't know about these things until after Timothy goes missing. Now, you're going to find out at one point that he had a younger brother, and we won't say his name either. I don't know if he wants his name out there. Timothy's younger brother had driven him to work and left him at the farm at some point. We're not sure if it was right before Timothy went missing or if it was a few weeks before. We're not sure. But we do know that the son came and told his father sometime after Timothy went missing that he had driven Timothy to this farm. And these people jumped his case and pulled a gun on him. And Timothy says, whoa, no, that's my brother. It's okay. He's just dropping me off for work. Somehow, after this altercation, they backed down, and the younger brother left the property and left Timothy there. We do not know if this was the last time or if this was a few weeks before. We don't know. But we do know that there was that incident. Of course, nobody knew about that incident but Timothy and his brother at the time. Then there was another incident. For the month of December, so this would have been 1986, for the month of December, Timothy did not go to work at all. He refused. He had called home, said he needed a ride home, and he was not going back there. There was some kind of ordeal happened on this farm, and Timothy was not going to go back. He was planning on not going back. Okay. Now, he never would disclose exactly what happened to his family. He did say that the boss was having trouble with his kids and blaming it all on him instead of the kids. But other than that, nobody was told what happened in December at that farm. But we do know that Timothy was not going to go back. And then somehow he was, after about a month, he was talked into returning. Now, Warren, I never did see exactly how long he was back to work. Was it just a month or was it a couple weeks? I don't know. You might have to clear that up for me in the comments. So we have an incident where a gun was pulled. We have an incident where Timothy refuses to go to work for a month. We also have some kind of incident where Timothy says that the boss is blaming him for things that his own children have done. Now, we also know that many, many years after this, some crime writers and bloggers Warren says a month. Okay, so he had been back to work for a month. Some podcasters and things had started digging into this case, and they tried to reach out to the daughter of PK. Now, we do know some things happened that it would seem as if the daughter could be in the middle of some things. We'll just put it that way. Some contention between the boys. We'll just put it that way. Well, this woman, when asked for information, very politely, I might add, I seen the messages. She exploded and said that he got what he deserved, and that nobody's going to ever find anything, and she's not going to say anything because she's not that stupid, and kept talking about how her family is full-blooded Italian and like that matters, and kind of went off on a rampage. And so you can actually see those text messages at the end of a blog post. I can actually put that link in the description of this video if we'd like to. So, Cricket, tell me, what do you think when you find out that this kid had already suffered some verbal abuse? You know, obviously he'd already suffered some sort of abuse at this place, but he never would say anything to his family, so it left them, kind of out. But what do you say? What do you think? Where are you on this? Because I'm curious. Are you still there? Having trouble with Cricket. Tammy, you jump in.
Well, it sure makes you wonder when she starts talking that way, doesn't it? I mean,
yes.
Why would she act like that?
Exactly.
She definitely doesn't care for him at all.
No, okay. So if you're watching this video live, you'll get it. If you don't watch it live, you're going to miss it, because here's the link. If you don't watch it live, a lot of the comments disappear, so you may not get I'll make sure and copy that and put that in the video description for anybody who's watching the replay.
Yeah.
Here's the link. Here's the thing with it. At the end of that conversation, you'll see that she kind of flips out. She kind of says, I'm not saying anything. I'm not that stupid, and different things like this. And this person is constantly saying, I'm sorry I offended you. I didn't mean to, I was just asking if you had any information, so this is someone who he is just asking for information. Say, hey, I heard someone went missing on the property you lived on. I just need information. He wasn't accusing anybody of anything. And so to me, it shows that they know more than what they want to say, is what it is.
And they should have done a search at at the farm too. Not just question everybody, but they should have done a search.
Absolutely. Now, Warren did do a search with dogs himself. It was before the place was torn down, so it had to be within the first couple of years. But the police didn't do any systematic property-wide searches, as far as I could find. Is that correct, Warren? I didn't read anywhere where the police did a systematic search on their own. I didn't see that. So instead, you've got a father who's trying to fight for information. And unfortunately, he doesn't have any information to give to the police. You know, he's like, I don't have any information to give you. They're not giving you any information, you know, and it looks like the police aren't even trying to get their own information, you know, so this case is stalled out exactly where it was before, you know, and that's what's so devastating. If you don't have information, you have to dig for it. That's what investigators do. They investigate and they dig up the information they need, you know, so the parents don't have any information to give. Then the other people on the other side of things, they aren't giving you any information, and they're trying to spin information out of thin air to give you to distract you. It's your job to dig in there, boots on the ground, find something yourself. And to me, the police should have been on that property Monday. The police should have beat the family there. Warren says the police department never searched the farm. Ugh.
See, that should have been the first place to look. I mean, question everybody, search the farm.
Yep. Well, and this is what ticks me off so bad. They never, ever want to believe the family. The family says, oh no, they're not the kind of person who would run away. The police never believe it.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. I don't know.
Tell me, well, if you'd seen as many cases as I have, you would realize that the family doesn't know anything most of the time. And I said, how many cases have you had? I said, I have written about 300. His jaw dropped to the floor and he goes, well, I haven't had quite that many. I haven't investigated them as much boots on the ground, but I have researched and written about over 300 cases. And 90% of the time, the family is right about their family member. They may not know all the details. Of course, kids have a way of hiding things from their parents and all that, but they know at the core the character of their child. And if they say their child did not run away, then they did not run away. That's the way it is 90% of the time. And so the fact that they wouldn't believe the family, they're like, well, he's of age, and then wait another 48 hours. That's asinine to me. I'm like, can you not count? Between Friday night and Monday morning is more than 48 hours. Do your math. Go back to kindergarten, learn how to tell time, and then go back and get your badge and do your job.
Yeah, and I don't know how they did searches back then, as opposed to, you know, because through the years that's involved where you got more search teams and stuff like that. Right. So I'm thinking, but still, they should have done something on that farm. Talk to do something.
See, to me, the thing with it is the police should have beat the family to the farm. The family went to the farm that afternoon. The police should have been there with them to escort them to the farm, or have already been there. Okay. The police should have already been there. And this is what I know police are, they're understaffed, they're underpaid. I'm trying to think of all the reasons, but this is what I get upset about. If it was one of those police officers' sons, they would have rode PK into the ground until he said something.
Yep.
You know, and instead, we don't even know that Timothy left that farm on Friday. We don't know that Timothy left that farm on Friday at all. He could have been killed on Friday, and they had till Monday to clean up the mess.
he could have been killed earlier than Friday, for all we know.
And I mean, if we knew exactly the last time he talked to his family, we could kind of work through it. Beach says career burnout. Now that one I believe is a real thing, and I do.
Yes,
and
it is.
This is the thing. Every time I gripe about a cop, I feel bad because for every bad cop there's out there, there is one who's worked themselves to death and is exhausted. And, so it's like it's one of those catch-22s. You've always got some bad apples in the bunch that don't do their job. But then of course, we're talking a rural area again. And I have found so many times that a lot of these rural counties, they don't really have the training that a lot of other officers have. It's not like they're downtown Chicago, they're detectives in Chicago, or they are like my friend Gary Jenkins. He was a mob cop in Kansas City, helped take down the Italian mafia in Kansas City, and that was his specialty, and he was good at it, and they accomplished their goals, but not everyone has that kind of training or education or resources, but still it doesn't take education or training or resources to get a guy with a badge or a girl, I don't care, get somebody with a badge out there to that farm, get it out there, go look, go talk to people, get a search warrant, go look through all the barns, go look through all the equipment, see what you can find. So to me, there's excuses and reasons, but not to the detriment of a case like this. You're talking about an 18-year-old, so legally he's a grown-up, but with his issues, he was still fairly childlike. And I don't care if it was your grandma. Get somebody with a badge and a gun out there to do some looking, and so to me, I'm kind of like, I don't believe he ever left the farm. I believe if there's anything left, you're going to find it on that farm. Unfortunately, I don't believe that there's a lot left because there's some rumors we can't talk about on camera of what happened. But I do believe that there are people that are still alive that knows what happened, and they should be brought to justice no matter how old this case is. They brought the Golden State Killer to justice in his 80s. And everybody's like, well, he's 80. What good does it do? And I'm like,
doesn't matter.
No, he's not going to be put to death. And no, he's not going to live in prison for 80 years. But that is the answers that those families deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Those families had to live a lifetime not knowing, and they needed those answers. And so I didn't care that the Golden State Killer was in his 80s. They got the answers they needed. They got to see that guy in court. They got to have their words in court. They got to read their victim impact statements. There's no such thing as closure. No such thing as closure. But there is answers. There are answers. And your chance to stand before this monster that you have labeled this human being as, because, we all want to think that people who do these kinds of things look like monsters, but they just look like other humans. And it's almost disappointing when you finally see them, because they're never what you have built them up. They never look like what you've created in their mind to be. But you still, as a victim's family member, deserve the right to see that human being. You still have you deserve the right to get their name, to get the answers. You deserve the right to have your word in court, because those victims' impact statements, 99.999% of the time, the killers don't give a crap about the victim impact statements. It doesn't bother them. They don't care. They're so far beyond empathy that they don't care. What that is it gives the victim's family a a chance to stand up and have their word. It gives them a moment in time to say, this is my piece. This is what I wanted to get off my chest. It's for the victims and their families is what the day in court is for.
Yeah.
And so I say that this family knows what happened. And like Warren said, I was getting to it. PK, the foreman, died in 2005. So the only people left are his children that were there that day and most likely participated in whatever happened. And so this is what
another boss too.
They need answers. What'd you say, Tammy?
I think there was two bosses. There was PK and his family, and then I think there was another boss too there as well.
I don't have that person's name,
I have it there, but I won't say
had
it.
anything to do with it. So this is the thing. What we need to do today is we need to share this video. We need to share Timothy's picture. We need to share it to all the groups, especially there's a lot of specialty true crime groups out of Georgia. But we need to share this, and when a case gets to this age, there won't be any justice. You know, there won't be any justice. No one's going to be going to court and getting their day in court because the person that they think did this is actually gone. But they need answers, you know, and this gentleman has lived 40 years not knowing what happened to his son. He needs answers before it's his time to go.
Yep, and Timothy deserves a burial.
Timothy, somebody needs to bring him home. You know, his family deserves a place to grieve. I mean, that's what a graveyard is for. I mean,
Yep.
a gravesite isn't for the deceased. The deceased doesn't know where they're at. The deceased doesn't know in what state their body is. The deceased is on to another plane of existence. The deceased does not care where you put their remains. That graveside is for the victim's family members. That's for the grieving. That is a place, a location a last point of contact that they have with a family. Okay. That's a place of grief and a place of memory, a place to pour out your tears, your love, your affection, that's a last point of contact to bring peace and hope and a slight restoration. You have to have that end. It's like writing a book and never saying the end is what a missing persons case is. That book's going to continue on and it's going to stay in that same horrific chapter. Now, I've gotten 15 books published over the years. What if I wrote this book and about 2/3 of the way through, I write the most horrific, gut-wrenching chapter there ever was, give you nightmares. And then I didn't write anything else. I just took that same chapter and I copied it and pasted it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the book never ended. It was a series that had a new book coming every year, a new book, new book, new book. Every birthday, every Christmas, I'm going to release a new book. And everything I write from then on is that same horrific chapter. That's what a missing persons case is, because the family never gets to put the end and close the book. And that's what we need in this case. We need the end. It's not a happy ending, but we need the end. So this family can close the book and try to take the next step, you know. And I'm a believer, so I believe that there is going to be justice at the moment of death. There is justice, good or bad. You know, you're judged according to what you do down here, how you treated other people, what you are, you know. And so I believe that if this man actually did something to Timothy, he's got his justice. But that still doesn't give the end to everyone that's left here. So I want you guys who are watching to share this, because this family still needs this story out. And if you look up Timothy J. Guy missing, there's not a lot out there. There's a few old blog posts. There's a couple podcasts here and there. There's 2 or 3 videos. There's a few videos. To me, that's a shame. We should be shouting this to the hilltops. So everybody that watches this either now or in the replay, I ask you to share, not for my benefit, but share for this family, because this family needs the end, and they need to be able to close this book. And so yeah, make sure and share this. Girls, do you have anything you want to add?
I can't think of anything other than my Joanne Pointer on here put that he probably witnessed something, which I think that's probably what happened. He probably
I
witnessed
guarantee
something.
you. See, this person had drug charges on his record. This person also had weapons charges, and then there were some other charges that were unclear. To me, I don't care if you're an ex-cop or not. That doesn't give you a right to have drugs on your property. It's not a right to run stolen. I don't know if they were stolen guns or just illegal guns or what. I want you to realize that there was something major going on running through that farm, and this innocent little boy saw something or heard something or came up against something beyond his control. Something lured him back to the farm. I don't know what it is. I mean, it could have been blackmail, could have been threats, it could have been anything. It could have been the girl saying, "Hey, I like you, come back." Could have been anything.
Yeah, I feel he was lured back there.
But whatever was running through that farm, illegal, legal, otherwise, this little boy was caught up in it and paid the ultimate price for it. I do not believe Timothy Guy ever stepped foot off of that farm. I do not believe that there was ever a man named Jeff or a vehicle. I don't believe any of that. I believe that boy seen something happened. I don't know if there was a fight and it got out of control and everybody else cleaned up the mess. I don't know. And I intentionally do not say people's names on this because it's out there. You can dig into it if you want to. But I can still tell you the story and tell you that there is some suspicious things going on at this property that should not have been. And I do not believe this boy ever left that property.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, now there's a housing development there, and there's all kinds of houses in the area. I mean, you could take dogs and ground penetrating radar, but that's going to take a lot of red tape to get warrants for all of those houses and all those properties. So we need a confession. Is what we need. We need a confession. Surely there was some sort of bystander in the group that wasn't quite 100% in on everything, but was too scared to say something. It's been 40 years. It's time to go ahead and not let fear stop you and come forward. Sometimes there's people who know things, but they don't realize it's a very big piece of the puzzle and they don't think it's important. So, I mean, how many hundreds of cases have been solved because one person had been hanging on to this little tidbit of information that didn't make sense in itself. But once they let that out and told the police, that was the little piece that just put the whole puzzle together. I mean, how many times has that kind of thing happened? I mean, the Golden State Killer, there was just one little piece that came forward, and then they did their genetic mapping and they found the guy. And it was because of one little piece of information that they had received all those years later. So Share this to everybody that you can. Remember this family. This is a 40-year struggle that nobody should have to deal with. And then if you have information, call it in. Call it in. It's not too late to call it in. And whatever little bit of information you have is very important. I can assure you it is. All right, girls, I'm going to say goodbye. You guys want to say goodbye real quick?
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you.